Isolated nomads are under siege in the Amazon jungle. Brazil by Scott Wallace. The tread marks in the blood-red earth are deep and fresh. Tainaki Tanitaha climbs off his dirt bike for a closer look. From this morning, he says, with the conviction of a veteran tracker attuned to any sign of human movement in these lawless borderlands. Through binoculars, he scans the rolling hills of fire-scorched savanna that lead out to a tree-crowned ridge in the distance. Here, on one of Brazil's most hotly contested frontiers, where denuded scrubland pushes up against old-growth forest and private homesteads breach the boundaries of Indian land, the tire tracks bear a singular, ominous meaning. Loggers, Tainaki says. The enemy. Tainaki, who also goes by his Portuguese name, Lercio Sousa Silva Guajajara, turns to his companions, 4 other Guajajara tribesmen, as they dismount road-beaten motorbikes. The patrol forms a motley crew, patched jeans in camouflage and aviator shades and bandanas to shield their faces from the ubiquitous dry season dust. Bearing an equally modest array of weapons, a single-shot hunting rifle, a homemade pistol, a few machetes dangling from cinched waistbands, they call to mind a strange, cross-genre film. Think Mad Max meets The Last of the Mohicans. Shall we go after them? Tainaki asks. Going after illegal loggers here has become the hallmark of patrols like this. They've set logging trucks ablaze, seized weapons and chainsaws, and sent irate loggers packing. Patrol leaders, the 33-year-old Tainaki among them, have received multiple death threats. Some patrolmen use fake names to mask their identities. 3 were murdered in 1 month's time in 2016. They belong to a 100-member, homegrown force of indigenous volunteers who call themselves the Forest Guardians. This group and others like it have sprouted up in recent years to meet a rising tide of illegal logging that is decimating protected woodlands in the eastern Amazonian state of Maranhão, including the 1,600 square mile Arariboya indigenous land. Along with the forests, the wild game that has sustained the Guajajara's hunting culture for generations is vanishing. The lakes that give birth to their rivers and streams are drying up because of deforestation. Fish and birds are dying off. The stakes are certainly high for the Guajajara, but they've adopted effective survival strategies since their first bloody contacts with outsiders centuries ago. Most of them know the ways of the outside world, many have lived in it. Far more dire is the plight of another tribe, with which they share the Arariboya Reserve, the Awa. Several bands of Awa nomads, the easternmost isolated, or uncontacted, people in the Amazon, roam the woodlands in the core of the territory, living in a state of near-constant flight from the whine of winches and chainsaws and, in the dry season, the smoke of wildfires. What was Machu Picchu for? Top 5 theories explained. Confined to a shrinking forest core, the Awa are especially vulnerable. But even in the still largely untouched expanses of rainforest straddling Brazil's western border with Peru, isolated groups must live on the run to escape the depredations of illegal logging, gold prospecting, and now drug trafficking. All across the Amazon basin, in fact, threats to the security of the estimated 50 to 100 isolated and uncontacted tribes, perhaps some 5,000 people in all, are rising. These groups represent most of the world's remaining isolated tribes. The only so-called uncontacted tribes known to exist today outside the Amazon are in Paraguay's Chaco scrub forest, on the Andaman Islands in the Indian Ocean, and in western New Guinea, Indonesia. The numbers may seem small, but indigenous rights advocates say there is something much larger at stake, the preservation of the last vestiges of a way of life that has all but disappeared from the planet, one that has survived apart from our industrial economy. When an ethnicity or a human group disappears, the loss is immense, indigenous rights activist Sidney Pozuelo says. The face of humanity is left more homogeneous, and humanity itself more impoverished. The interaction of the Awa, also called the Gwaja or Awa Gwaja, with the outside world has been defined largely by violence against them. Today perhaps 100 of the roughly 600 Awa still carry on nomadic lives in the forest. The rest, who have come into contact with modernity in recent decades, settled in villages in 3 of 4 protected indigenous territories, strung out in a contiguous corridor along Maranhão's western frontier. The presence of the Awa has helped spur legal protection for nearly 4,800 square miles of seasonally dry woodlands that form a critical buffer for the rainforests to the west. Although isolated groups of Awa are present in 3 of the 4 reserves, only in Arariboia are all the Awa, some 60 to 80 of them, essentially uncontacted, keeping to themselves in the core of the reserve. They still hunt with bows and arrows, still gather wild honey and barbaçu nuts, and still rely almost entirely on the bounty of the primal forest and its sources of water. No settled Awa live around them who might serve as intermediaries in the event of an encounter with outsiders. Nestled in the hills and plains ringing the reserve's heartland are dozens of towns and hamlets where some 5,300 Guajajara live. And beyond the boundaries of the reserve, in a kind of third concentric ring, are 5 major municipalities where timber remains the primary economic driver. With 75% of Maranhão's original forest cover already lost, most of the valuable timber stands left are in Arariboia, the 3 other indigenous lands where Awa live, Alto Churiacu, Karu, and Awa, and an adjacent biological reserve. Timber extraction is banned in these areas, making nearly the entire logging business in the state a de facto criminal enterprise. But that doesn't deter poachers, who undermine enforcement efforts with lookouts and phony documents. Logging trucks, often without plates, ply back roads unpatrolled by police, delivering their payloads to secret sawmills beyond Indian lands. This network has made the Awa's existence so precarious that the tribal people's rights group Survival International called the Awa Earth's most threatened tribe, in launching a global campaign on their behalf in 2012. In Maranhão, the Guajajara have made common cause with Os Isolados, the isolated ones, believing their own survival to be inextricably bound to that of their Awa neighbors. The struggle to save the Awa and the forest is one and the same, says Sonia Guajajara, the former executive director of the Articulation of Indigenous Peoples of Brazil, which seeks to give a voice to the country's more than 300 indigenous groups. She's also a candidate for national office in this year's elections. As Tainaki's forest guardians huddle to decide on their next move, a helmeted figure emerges from a nearby farmhouse, kickstarts a dirt bike, and zooms past at full throttle, his face shrouded by a polarized visor. "All hero," the men shout. "Spy." Besides intimidation by the loggers, the guardians also must contend with a network of infiltrators among their own people. Informants keep an eye out for the patrols and rush to relay intelligence to their paymasters, who in turn alert logging crews in the field via two-way radio.